Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to Faith Seeking Understanding. I'm Allan, your host. I am a pastor, retired, a professor, a Bible moth, a foreigner, an exile in a strange land, and a theologian in exile. And also a peddler of hope. Cannot forget that in these days. And I am the self-appointed Anselm of Canterbury Chair of Podcast Theology and Culture at Faith Seeking Understanding University, a completely fabricated university. But unlike Trump University, this is a place. This is a place where we all can ponder profound things.
Yes.
So, Michael, I'm not in a real good mood. So we're going to be talking about that. But my conversation partner, as always, is Michael. I'm so excited. I don't know what to do with myself. Cruz. And if you're wondering why he's so excited, it's because his Chiefs are returning to the Super Bowl. Michael, you got to feel good.
One went away from a three-peat. That would be like, you got to put that on a mountain somewhere, I think, know. That would be pretty amazing.
I don't know. Does Kansas City have any mountains nearby?
No, not nearby.
You're pretty flat.
We'll put it in Denver.
I was going to say, oh, wow. I was going to say Mount Mahomes. There you go.
Right,
yeah, that would be great. Okay. Yeah.
I've told people before that I know people are sick of the Chiefs everywhere outside of Kansas City because they keep winning and all this keeps happening. But I have told people repeatedly, we moved here when I was 9 years old. Yeah. And the next year, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. And that made me an NFL fan. And I was so excited because I was in the city where we had an NFL team and we were going to see all sorts of great football and playoff games and Super Bowls and all that kind of stuff. When was the next Super Bowl? 50 years later.
Yeah.
So we've been waiting for.
Well, you probably saw yesterday after the Chiefs won. I had a lot of my friends posting on social media.
Yeah.
We didn't get the Super Bowl we wanted, and I just want to say, okay, fine. Next year, make sure your team plays better. I mean, I don't know how to. It's like this is not supposed to be orchestrated. It's not like. It's not like we say, Chiefs, you've had your turn. Now we need to somebody else. It's not the way this works. So you didn't want to see the Chiefs. All right, fair enough.
Right.
But they won it. So it's where we are. So anyway, it was a good game. The Bills played a great game.
They sure did.
It seemed like every time the Chiefs were about to start to pull away and make the game
right back in.
Non-competitive, boy, the Bills came right back.
They sure did.
And they hung in there.
Yeah. Josh Allan is amazing. It's a great team. So
I mean, really cool. I like seeing great games like that.
I do too.
It's just a reminder that it really can be something that's really special. So All right. Well, let's move on.
Very good,
Michael. We are. I'm going to say this. You can respond, but we are now in what I'm going to say in our lifetime. In our lifetime, we are in. Unprecedented and perilous times.
Yeah.
And with the election, the second election of Donald Trump as president, and we're going to spend the first part of this conversation talking about some of the things he's done, but then we're going to spend the second part talking about how to stay sane in this time, because we do need to stay sane in this time. So I really do think in just what we've seen in the last week and a half, has it been a week and a half?
Just a week.
Just a week? Seems like 4 years already.
Go today, yeah.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. I was talking to somebody I can't name because I'm involved with the immigration community. And so I actually know some things on the ground that I'm not supposed to say, but I will tell you this, and I can tell you this, that there was no doubt that behind the scenes, the people in Trump's orbit who were working were really prepared to enact what they wanted. And they got off the ground really well. And they're enacting this dystopian policy, this as I see it. So let me stop there. What are your comments?
Yeah, I would frame it that I think that we are probably in the most dangerous place in this country probably since 1941. the threat was from without. This time the threat is from within. So I really think that this is pretty perilous times that we're in. So it requires all of us to apply our best wisdom and our best energy to the issues that are confronting us.
Yeah. Yeah, we really, authoritarians, I mean, the playbook is, I mean, it's always the same,
It is, right.
and, for those of us who have spent some time on this, and I know you have as well, I've had a particular interest in some of this stuff for two reasons. One is, I've always been interested in the Holocaust and
Right.
also Dietrich Bonhoeffer, but because of my love of Latin America, and I do have a special love for Latin America. I have been intentional about studying history, and of course, Latin America, is well known for its authoritarian figures. For those of us who spent time studying this, we're watching this now, and it's not a surprise, and it's something that we've said for how many years, right?
Yes, right. Yeah.
We have said this is coming, this is going to happen,
right?
So none of this is like, I mean, I'm waiting for the first person who voted for Trump to tell me.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened yet, but I'm waiting for somebody to say to me, we just didn't see this coming. And I'm going to say, well, some of us have been telling you for how many years?
Right.
And you haven't been listening. You've been telling us we're overreacting, or, we don't know what we're talking about. And no, this is not the same thing. This is different.
Right.
It's just, the playbook is just not a surprise, is it?
No, it sure isn't. It's pretty classic. It's pretty standard for what we've seen around the world elsewhere. Yeah. And I think it's, I'll say the words are ironic, but I think it's worth noting that today is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Yeah. And to think about where that ended up and the carnage that caused. It was 80 years ago today that we got to the end of that road. Yeah. And let's pray that we don't have anything that goes anywhere near approaching.
Some of the stuff right now that we see what's happening with the particularly the Latin immigrants. I mean, again, Donald Trump isn't going after the white Canadians that have overstayed their business, right? I mean, there's a reason why these people are being targeted. I remember back in the early 90s at the church I served at the time, there was a lady at the church whose husband had passed away. I knew him briefly before he passed away, but he was in Germany in World War II.
Right.
And he actually was one of the first of the troops to enter into, and I don't remember which concentration camp it was. I can't remember which one it was. But they entered into it and of course saw the horror. And she told me, she said that as her husband and his unit were on the way back, they had left the area and they'd gone back, running into other American units, telling them what they had witnessed. The troops were saying, "You're lying. There's no way. There's no way anybody would treat anybody like that. You're lying."
Right. Yeah.
Well,
they weren't.
they weren't lying. So So let's talk about a couple of things. Let's do the immigration thing since we're on it. And then I want to talk a little about economics, get into your wheelhouse a little bit.
Okay.
Sure. There's no doubt that Donald Trump, the argument has been, and again, it's an authoritarian, it's from the playbook. The enemy are the drug dealers and the criminals coming to us across the southern border. And we've got to do something about those criminals. Well, of course, when you do find people who are criminals breaking the law, it doesn't matter where they come from, they need to be arrested. They need to be held to account. Those things have to happen. But of course, what has happened is that this thing is overly exaggerated.
Right.
And what's going on now, it really just becomes a cover story.
Yeah, it is.
For deporting people who have come here from Central America who get stuck in the immigration system because the immigration system is a mess and it's broken, something that the Republicans in Congress are not going to fix.
Right.
They're not interested in fixing it. So these good people, they're waiting to go through the system. They're law abiding. They work. Always want to say, if we're so afraid immigrants are taking people's jobs and they're lazy collecting Social Security, why is ICE raiding workplaces, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so and they got kids and they're contributing. They're immigrants who like our ancestors did.
Right,
They
right,
they they came over here and became good Americans.
right,
They're contributing, and these are the people that are getting deported. These are the people that are getting uh, uh, treated terribly.
right,
And it's all just a cover story. It's all just a ruse to make America whiter, make America more white. This is
right,
Stephen
right.
Miller, who is the
Yeah, yeah,
architect,
right.
of this. And I try not to be too mean, but I got to tell you, every time I see Stephen Miller, my first thought is, boy, would he look good in an SS uniform.
Boy, would he ever.
Uh, and he is bound and determined that he's going to do everything he can to make America as white as possible. And so
Yeah,
it should not be surprising
right,
that innocent people
right,
are getting caught up in this. And
right.
this is the problem.
Yeah. And I think from a coming at it from a different angle as well too, is that there's the suffering and the persecution of those people that are being deported from just a more selfish point of view about the health of the nation. Um, those immigrants disproportionately start businesses at higher rates than Native Americans, say Native people that are born here, that have a long history here in the States. They start businesses at a much higher rate. They are paying taxes in the tunes of tens of billions of dollars of taxes into the system and into things like Social Security. And they are the ones who are helping that get buildings built, to get food harvested, that type of thing. And so the most um, logical, most if you're looking for the best world, the most logical thing to do would be to have a system where you could have guest workers that come here that fulfill those kind of things, have them documented, and have them be able to come and go to meet the economic demands that are there. And then you would not have to have so much energy wasted on trying to monitor all of this border activity, because you would have fewer people would be incentivized to try to sneak across the border to get into these positions. You would have more control over the border. So there are some things that are in between, quote, open borders and this total draconian deportation program that would benefit all of us, not just the immigrants, but those of us that are here, benefit our economy. It would just contribute to the general welfare of everyone. But that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
This is rooted in something much deeper than
Something much deeper and something sinister. It's
right.
Sinister.
Exactly.
I think that's
yeah.
That's one of the best words we could use. So
Yeah.
and who knows where they'll lead us. And speaking of, it's sort of, because it does kind of get into foreign policy in a sense. I think Donald Trump is bound and determined to offend every single ally we have eventually.
Right. Yeah.
He's irritated Denmark and Europe because of Greenland. He's irritated Canadians.
Right.
With wanting to make Canada the 51st state, and Costa Rica and Brazil because of the treatment of deportees.
Right.
And of course, he has praise for authoritarians, right?
Right.
He's always got good stuff to say about authoritarians. So
right.
It seems as if every ally, he's just bound and determined to irritate every ally, every Democratic ally that we have.
Right.
And so America first will quickly become America isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good thing. It opens up the door to China,
right,
to do things, and Trump can bluster about China all he wants, but he's not going to do anything to China that's significant, because China would respond. China's not Colombia, a little country.
Right.
So he's not going to do anything, drastic, but he just seems bound and determined to make sure that anybody and everybody who's been a good friend of the United States gets pushed away.
And of course, one of the things that's key to our welfare and our well-being in the United States is the relationship that we have with these other countries that exist there. We have been in a very beneficial position, and that the dollar has generally been the world currency in which things are traded. The Japanese already annoyed by some things in the previous administration, but things that have happened in recent years, as well as the Chinese, are selling off the debt that they hold in the United States to lower their exposure there. And you have China now, I think there was 20 some nations that just signed on to a agreement where they want to make the Chinese currency that's what's going to be their currency.
Their currency.
Their China's going to be based on the Chinese currency rather than the dollar. And they are aggressively trying to recruit other countries, which means the United States loses its influence in terms of being able to affect the world economy because the dollar, things are no longer denominated in the dollar. And then just in terms of security, being able to cooperate with other countries in a amenable way to meet common challenges, common goals, that type of thing. Isolating the United States makes us weaker and less prosperous as the further you go down that path.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, but it doesn't play into the megalomania of Donald Trump and authoritarians who want to see themselves as the savior of the world.
Yeah. How true is that? So, okay, well, let's kind of move into economics before we move into the second part of our discussion. And that is, of course, there was the story that Trump threw a temper tantrum because Costa Rica yesterday dared insist that their citizens who are being deported be treated humanely.
Right.
And he slapped a tariff. Now, Costa Rica is going to send their own flights to get them. So,
right.
And
maybe, Costa Rica or Colombia?
Or Colombia. I'm sorry. I keep saying Costa Rica. Colombia.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so Donald Trump sees this as a win, right? He bullied somebody. And it could be that Colombia just decided they can't afford a tariff because they are a much smaller country than the United States. But let's talk about Donald Trump loves tariffs. We know this. He in all over the years, if there is one thing he just hasn't changed his mind on, it's tariffs. And that when you put tariffs on countries, they end up paying for it, not the consumer, which I don't know of any economist. Now, maybe we should distinguish. I'm going to let you do this. Okay. There are such things as targeted tariffs, right, which are a little different, I think, than the general tariffs that Trump likes to support. So in general, talk about the difference between those two and talk about the problems then with tariffs that Trump likes to wants to impose.
Right. Well, I mean, to some degree, well, first of all, what is a tariff? Let's start there. Tariff is when for Americans, tariff is when the United States requires the company that is importing goods to pay a tax on those goods that they imported. All right. So the company, if I'm Joe Schmo here in the United States and I order stuff from China, China ships the stuff to me. And as soon as that hits the port, then the United States government puts a tax on me that I have to pay for having imported those goods. So taxes are paid by the company inside the United States that imports the goods. They aren't paid by a foreign country. And that's one of the key things that is just, I don't know if it makes any difference. It's hard to tell if he is truly that dense or he's just being that obtuse that he knows it's not true, but he wants to promote this anyway. This idea that he said in his inauguration speech, he says it will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury coming from foreign sources, that's what tariffs will do. And it won't. That just is not the way it works. And so what the impact of tariffs then is that a company has to pay those taxes. Well, they've got to cover their costs somehow. And the overwhelming majority of those tariffs get passed on to consumers as higher prices. So that's what happens. Now, there have always been some tariffs to some modest degree. Sometimes there can be many reasons why you would impose a tariff. Sometimes it's on particular goods as opposed to a country. You could say particular products might have a tariff on them. And that's usually because the country imposing the tariffs for whatever reason, for national security, for industrial policy, whatever, is trying to protect their domestic industries from competition to get those industries good and strong. And you see that particularly in many emerging nations that you may have that. Also, tariffs can be used, and in some sense, like Trump is talking about, can be used as a stick in order to try to influence somebody a direction you want to go. So we have used tariffs with China when we have felt like they were stealing intellectual property or not behaving according to sound practices in terms of tariffs. You impose a tariff in order to penalize them for not playing well. It tends the idea, but the general assumption is that you're trying to get everybody to play well so that you can then have no tariffs, not to just have tariffs to for the sake of them. That's different from what Trump is saying. Trump is explicitly saying, and he just said this in a speech the other day or 2 days ago, something like that. And I have a Fox article that talks about this. And I've heard him say it before. It's the first time I've seen it recorded that he said it in public at a rally. His idea is he thinks he's going to get rid of the income tax system, that he's just going to delete the income tax system, and we're going to pay for everything through tariffs. Okay. Which effectively is saying, because 40% of households don't pay any income tax in the first place at the bottom end of the schedule. So getting rid of income tax doesn't help the people that are at the bottom of the income spectrum. It helps the people that are at the top of the income spectrum. But we're going to do tariffs, and tariffs are overwhelmingly on the consumer goods that we use, which means the people at the bottom of the income ladder are the ones who will be paying exorbitantly more prices for the stuff they need in daily life. Rich people will be paying more too, but the consumer goods that will have tariffs on them are a smaller portion of the budget that they have to spend. So you've got this massive shift of where income goes in the country to the wealthy, and the burden of financing the country shifted to the people that can least afford it. That's the way this plays out. But he keeps trying to sell this, and I think this is possibly the reason that I suspect he knows this. He's trying to sell people that tariffs come from foreign countries because he needs to get those people that are lower income, who don't know economics, to be able to sort this out. That sounds like America first. We're going to stick those other countries and they're going to give us some money. That's what he's telling them.
Right.
When in fact, what he's really saying is, I'm going to stick you with the money. You're going to end up paying for this, not foreign countries. That's what's really happening. And I think he knows that.
Yeah.
And so that's the twisted side of it. The very people who are most supportive of him on this are the very people who are going to get hit the hardest if he gets something even close to that. Now, he can't just undo the IRS system by fiat. I mean,
that's true. That's true.
But it does show you where his thinking is at and how he processes these things. But forget the IRS system for the moment. If you go around posing a 20, 25%, 50% tariff on things are going to get more expensive, and it's going to hit those people that are lower income the hardest.
Sure.
We don't know exactly which foods. And then going back to where we began the conversation, if you deport the people that are currently in the construction industry, that are in the agricultural industry, you either deport people or deport enough of them that it scares everybody away from coming to those jobs. You have an instant reduction just like that in the labor force for those industries, and they can't make up that labor force that quickly. And so you're going to see escalating food prices, houses already unaffordable become more expensive. I mean, the whole thing is just insane, but that's what he's promoting.
Yeah.
Michael, I just have to say that in our lifetime, Donald Trump has pulled off one of the biggest con jobs.
Oh, it is. It's a tremendous con job.
People have voted for him because he knows money and he's such a good businessman. And I mean, the guy to the place had bankrupted so many businesses he started that he couldn't get loans from banks. And
right.
Just everything. And I mean, has just been sold. And it reminds me of Carl Sagan, who talks about the bamboozle. His one quote, he says, and at one point it's people continue in the bamboozle because it's less painful to stay in to continue to be bamboozled than to admit you have been bamboozled.
Exactly right.
And it just has been one of the biggest con jobs.
Yeah. Well, and
I've seen in history.
I think one of the pieces that feeds into this, and it's somewhat ironic, is that in that first administration, when he succeeded Obama, he inherited an economy that was fairly solid. It was reasonably solid footing. It was perking along. He got that. And during that first administration, throughout his cabinet, various members of Congress, other people in key positions. Many of them were able to hold his most crazy extremes in check in terms of the stuff that he was thinking about and talking about. And so effectively, other than his big tax cut, it's hard to think of much legislation that he passed that actually had an impact one way or the other on the economy. He basically was going on the fumes of what he had inherited. And so he didn't do much of anything that would have an impact on the economy. This time, we're getting him without those guards on it, those guardrails on his crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And so now what you're going to see is him trying to do these tariffs, trying to do all this crazy stuff that is going to have an impact on the economy. I just want to say something in relation to a conversation we've had before. I've said presidents generally are not responsible for, at the edges they're responsible, but generally aren't responsible for economies. And I think that that to qualify that, I think the issue is that's generally true, that you can't control the outside factors of what happens. We're going to have a housing, I don't know, crisis. We're going to have a housing issue this next year, and we would have that whether we had Joe Biden or whether we had Donald Trump. There are going to be some things like that that are going to develop. I suspect we're going to have a recession this next year. That may have been true whether it was Trump or Biden. But you can do policies at the edges of these things that can make things substantially worse or substantially less worse when negative things are happening. And all the policies that he is, I say, I'm getting a little over the top there, but the significant policies that he's proposing are not what you want to see in a time of economic trouble. Yeah. And the last piece I'll just say, send it back to you, is I just think that the business community values stability. Part of what reason they hate elections is because they don't know what's coming after the election, what things are going to be like. And so usually after election passes, things settle down and they're happy because now they know I've got this president's going to do these things. And so now I can plan my next few years. This chaos that he is about to create is not something that's going to sit well with a lot of people that are in the business community. So anyway, it's going to be a very tumultuous, I think, economy, and starting not too many weeks and months from now. So.
Yep, it is. It's where we are. Well, the two things that are certainly true. It will not. You and I will not be have a shortage of things to talk about.
Yeah.
And the late night comedians have more material now than they're ever going to be able to use.
Absolutely.
I guess if you can see a silver lining, there you go.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit. Let's move into the second part of our discussion, and that is, obviously this is very difficult, stressful times for a lot of people, including me. I think for those of us who see this as not a good thing, and it can really be, it can just be so, what's that? There's a meme going around currently. I think it's something like, currently my desire to be informed is at odds with my desire to stay sane.
Sane, yeah, right, yeah.
The reality is, Michael, we need to be informed. We need to know what's going on.
Right.
But at the same time, I've seen these stories about news ratings being down since the election. And I don't think it's because people don't want to watch CNN anymore. I think there are people who just don't want to watch the news.
Right. Yeah.
That's just depressing to them.
Right.
So you posted an article this morning on social media about this.
Yeah.
Let's use what you read to get into that conversation. In the age of Trump, in an insane age of Trump, how can we remain sane?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's important too. And I'll just fess up that probably once or twice a week, I'll wake up in the night, or I'll have some point during the day where I'm just like almost, panic attack, or about how awful this is. But I have to keep coming back to remind myself of several things. There's certain things I can't control. There are some things I can control.
Right. And
then also finding community with others to keep reminding myself that I'm not alone in what's happening, that there are others, and as a community, we can work through this together. So I think that taking good time to reflect, I do some journaling on some of this, to really get in touch with what you're feeling, what your emotions are, is key to staying sane. But what I was referring to today was a piece that I had seen, and I cannot find the original post by the sociologist. Her name is Jennifer Walter. She wrote a piece that I think is really excellent, gives some short things. And she talks about the what is happening right now with the country. And she talks about, Trump's put out these 200 plus executive orders doing all this stuff, going in, every direction. And it says that media theorist Marshall McLuhan predicted this type of behavior. He says, when humans face information overload, they become passive and disengaged. The rapid fire executive orders create a cognitive bottleneck, making it nearly impossible for citizens and media to thoroughly analyze every single policy. So you sort of reach this cognitive limit of all the stuff that you can take in, and an emotional limit of what can be there. And what part of what you need to know is this is by design. This is what Trump and his team are hoping for, is that you become so overwhelmed that you finally just check out, you don't pay any attention, and then they have nobody holding pressure to keep them accountable. And then it says that agenda setting theory explains the strategy. When multiple major policies compete for attention simultaneously, it fragments public discourse. Traditional media can't keep up with the pace, leading to superficial coverage. And so that tends to be what happens. And that's what they are attempting to do. And so she gives 5 brief things to think about. And I can just go give these to you, and we can see what we think. She talks about set boundaries. She says, pick 2 or 3 issues you deeply care about and focus your attention there. You can track everything. You can't track everything. That's by design. Impact comes from sustained focus, not scattered awareness. So focus on some specific things of interest. It says use aggregators and experts. Find trusted analysts who do the heavy lifting of synthesis. Look for those explaining patterns, not just events. So those who can tie the threads together, what's going on. That'll help you interpret other events as they occur. And she says, remember, feeling overwhelmed is the point. So when you recognize this, you regain some power. Take breaks, process. This is a marathon we're running here. So I think that's important. Practice going slow. Wait 48 hours before reacting to new policies. The urgent clouds the important. Initial reporting often misses context. And I would say that adding to that, in a lot of these executive orders that Trump has put out, some of them are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no way they're ever going to be implemented. They're not going to go through the courts. They're going to be challenged to things. And with a lot of those, I may make a joke about them here or there, but in terms of focusing my energy on them, those are going to take care of in their own time, in their own way, because they're ridiculous and they're not going to happen. Yeah. So developing some discernment about which things are really threats and which things are just all the turmoil to try to keep you off balance. And then finally, she says, build community, share the cognitive load. Different people track different issues. Network intelligence beats individual overload. Yeah. So finding a community of people where people can help inform you. And just as a general analogy, I heard James Carville recently talk about, he says, Muhammad Ali, when the boxer back in the 60s and 70s, when he would box, he had the rope-a-dope. And for people who don't know boxing or remember what that was, he would get up against the rope and put his fists up in front of his face and hold his arms there and just let the opponent just wail away at him. Just keep, punching and punching and punching and take those punches and then let the guy tire himself out. And then is when you'd counter punch. He'd start coming at the guy once he had him tired. And to some degree, he's suggesting that that's what we are doing with Trump. We don't have Congress. We don't have the presidency, so we can't directly punch back in those ways right now. We do have the courts in a lot of situations where I think there's an advantage that the courts are to the side of what we're talking about. But raising the issues where we need to raise the issues, but also understanding that we're not going to win a lot of these things. This is what happens with elections. People get elected, stuff happens, and you can't stop some of the stuff that happens. Yeah. But we've got to stay ready with the rope-a-dope and just let him punch himself out, is the way Carville said it. Let him punch himself out. And then once that's there, he's got all this stuff out, then becomes the opportunities to start punching back. And I rambling on here, but I
No,
was
that's
just
fine. No, go ahead.
I just qualify one thing, and I think that this is the part that I struggle with in some of this. Some of the issues that I would say that maybe, when we say rope-a-dope, we simply don't need to be fighting back so hard or worrying about them. There are a number of those, but there are issues, for instance, with the immigration, the deportations, those kind of things, where we need to involve ourselves in activities that are actively addressing some of those topics. And so some wisdom and discernment about which ones are which and what our own particular call is in terms of helping address those. We can't be involved in everything, but we can be involved in something. And I think that to me is where I would encourage people to look. But if you have that imagery of rope-a-dope, yep, we're getting beat pretty good right now. They're punching, but we're going to punch back.
Yeah, it's interesting because the immigration issue is very important to me. I've been involved with it, and
right,
and just and I knew what was coming before Trump took the oath. But I went from last week being just depressed to now I'm just angry.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Donald Trump, you're messing with my people, and I'm going to do my part.
Right.
To if I can save one immigrant family from being deported, I'm going to do it. And
right.
So at some point you get to resolve. And I think the in the psychology of all this, that's what's going to happen here, that at some point there will be a certain percentage of people who will go from being just depressed about all of this to just being angry.
Right.
And then going from anger to resolve.
You got to have something to channel that into.
And you have to have something to channel that energy. And so channel it into something positive, channel it into, I said over the years, Michael, as a theologian with Anabaptist sympathies.
Yeah.
I've never met an argument against empire I haven't liked.
Yeah.
Even though in the past, some of the arguments have been a little over the top.
You're right.
But boy, I'll tell you what, I've got good arguments now.
Boy, do we ever. I mean, one of the things I think about is the picture they showed at the inauguration with him up there, and then they showed the front row.
Yeah.
And who's seated there? Top elected officials, past presidents, maybe his cabinet nominees. No, Mark Zuckerberg, Bezos, Musk, the billionaires. That's who's in the front row of this presidency. Yeah. And it's the oligarchs. I mean, it's an attempted oligarchic takeover of the American system.
Yeah. And Trump, by the way, he's not hiding making money off the presidency anymore.
Oh, no. I
mean, he did it his first term, but
right.
He tried to have some kind of measure of secrecy, but now he's just because he knows, right?
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has ruled he's got immunity. He's going to push that to its limit, and so he just is not hiding it. And so it's where we are.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah. Well, we got more to do, so we'll do it.
Yep.
One of the things I do, just as we're talking about this, I try in the evening before I retire, if I can do it, if I'm in a situation where I can, I just listen to music that calms me down.
Exactly.
And gives me, and sometimes I will listen to some sacred music, with some of the old hymns that just give me words of assurance and confidence. And I find that on the evenings that I can do that, I go to bed, with a different mindset than being worked up over all this stuff. So the other thing I would say is, if you're going to be on social media, and I'm on social media as we all are, disconnect before you go to bed.
Absolutely.
Disconnect an hour or so, or an hour and a half, whatever it is, just disconnect.
Right.
And forget it.
Right.
And go do something and that just kind of puts you in a good frame of mind. That's the thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would reiterate that same thing. I think at least an hour or two before going to bed, I try not to do much after 7 o'clock in the evenings that's related to anything with the politics of things. That's not ironclad, but that's generally it. And then most mornings, I try to avoid looking at social media first thing, when I get up. I may check emails and see if there's any texts of anything I need to do, but try to stay away from that until at least after like 8 o'clock or something, getting into the day. A couple of things I would add along that as well is remember to keep doing things that you love, that bring you enjoyment, that bring you happiness. Keep doing those things as well too. I think it's important for mental health to have things to celebrate, to things that you enjoy doing. And all of us are different temperaments, different personalities. I can just tell you that having a mind that tends to be a little more to the analytic sometime, I too will sit down with some quiet music, that soothing music that gets me relaxed, where I can think. And one of the things that I have to keep peppering myself with questions: what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now? Name the emotions. Name what are they? And then asking my questions: where's that coming from? How does this feel familiar with other situations? And it doesn't necessarily resolve the emotion, it doesn't necessarily make the emotion go away, but it does give me power to some degree over those emotions and to embrace them, rather than being driven unconsciously by those things lurking in the background. So all of us are different in terms of what we need and what's going to empower us. But those are just a couple of thoughts I've had.
Good thoughts. Find your place and do what you need to do. So that's good.
Yeah,
that's a good place to end. So thank you for the conversation, friends. Please, before you click out of this, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. It's free of charge, and when you subscribe, the world gives us accolades, I guess, like that. Just go ahead and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, please like us, and that also helps us as well. So anyway, well, friends, this is Faith Seeking Understanding. I am Allan Bevere, and the patron saint of Faith Seeking Understanding is Anselm of Canterbury, who says, "I do not understand in order to believe, but I believe in order to understand." So friends, keep seeking.